It was supposed to be a harmless dare, just another stupid challenge to prove who had the guts to enter the old abandoned school after midnight. But nothing about that night was harmless because the moment I stepped through the rusted gate and heard it screech behind me, I knew something inside did not want us there. My name is Arif, and this story is about how four friends walked into a forgotten building that once echoed with laughter and left behind screams that will never die. It all started when Bilal said those words that still ring in my head. "If you are brave enough, come to the old school with me at midnight. They say you can hear voices of the ones who never left." We laughed at first, because everyone in the village had heard about that place, the school that burned down 20 years ago during a winter night when the teachers and students were trapped inside. Their bodies never recovered, and their souls said to wander the empty corridors calling for help that never came. I told myself it was just a story to scare kids from sneaking into a dangerous ruin. But part of me wondered why even the elders avoided that road after sunset. Why no one dared to even look in the direction of the school when the moon rose. We met at the edge of the dirt path just before midnight, the sky heavy with black clouds hiding the moon, and the trees swaying like restless shadows as the wind howled through their branches. Bilal was grinning like a devil, holding a flashlight under his chin, while Asen and Daniel tried to act cool, though I saw the way their eyes darted to the forest behind us at every rustle. "Last chance to back out," Bilal said, and when none of us moved he pushed the gate open and it groaned so loud it sounded like a cry. The smell hit us first, a damp mix of burnt wood and mold, and then we saw the building looming in the dark like a giant skeleton, windows shattered, roof collapsed in parts, the old bell tower tilting as if it might fall at any moment. 10 minutes inside, then we're out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, and Bilal laughed, saying, "What are you scared of, the dead kids?" That was when a sound drifted out of the darkness so soft I thought I imagined it, a faint whisper that seemed to come from deep inside the school, a single word I could not make out, but it chilled my bones. We stepped into the main hallway, and our footsteps echoed too loud in the silence, dust swirling in the beam of the flashlight like tiny ghosts dancing in the stale air. Old desks lay broken in corners, blackboards covered in layers of grime with faint chalk marks that looked like scratch lines from fingernails, and the smell of burnt paper clung to every wall. "This is insane," Daniel muttered, but Bilal just kept walking, leading us toward the classrooms as if he knew the way, and I noticed something strange. The deeper we went, the colder it became, like walking into the heart of winter, though outside the air was warm. We stopped at a door that was half burnt and hanging from one hinge, and when Bilal pushed it open it creaked and revealed a classroom frozen in time. Chairs scattered, books torn apart, a single small shoe lying in the center as if someone left in a hurry but never came back. Asen picked it up and whispered, "This belonged to a child," and before I could tell him to put it down we all heard it, a giggle, high-pitched and distant, like a child laughing behind the walls. We froze and stared at each other, and then the sound came again, this time from the hallway we just came from, a soft patter of footsteps running past the door, light and quick like a child playing tag. Bilal swore under his breath and shone the flashlight toward the hall, but it showed nothing except peeling paint and darkness stretching like an endless throat. "Probably just a rat," he said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. And that was when all the doors in the hallway slammed shut one after another in a thunderous sequence that shook the floor under our feet. Daniel screamed and ran toward the exit, but the moment he reached the hallway the flashlight flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness so thick it felt alive, wrapping around us, pressing against our skin. I fumbled for my phone, switched on the light, and in that pale glow I saw something I wish I could forget. There were marks on the walls, hundreds of them, words carved deep into the plaster like someone used their nails, and every word said the same thing: "Let us out." My throat closed, and before I could speak a voice whispered right by my ear, so close I felt the breath against my skin, a child's voice saying, "Don't go, play with us." I spun around, but there was no one there, only darkness and the faint outline of broken desks. Asen started muttering prayers, his voice trembling, and Daniel was pounding on the door that refused to open no matter how hard he hit it. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, voices of children crying, laughing, begging, and among them a deeper voice, low and guttural, speaking words that did not belong to this world. The air turned heavy, thick with the smell of burnt flesh, and then we saw them. In the glow of our phones, the classroom door creaked open on its own, and standing there were shapes, small like children but twisted, their limbs bent at wrong angles, skin charred black, eyes glowing like embers in the dark. They crawled toward us on all fours, their mouths open in silent screams until one of them let out a shriek so piercing it shattered the glass of the window. We bolted, pushing past the door into the hallway, but the hall was not the same anymore. It stretched impossibly long, with doors on both sides slamming open and shut as shadows spilled out, running alongside us, whispering our names. I heard mine clear as day. "Arif, stay with us." My legs burned as I ran, my breath tearing out of my throat, but the exit never came. No matter how far we ran, the hall just kept going like a loop. Bilal tripped and fell, and when I turned to help him, I saw hands, small blackened hands, grabbing his legs, pulling him back into the darkness as he screamed my name. We grabbed him, pulling with all our strength, and for a moment I thought we had him. But then something yanked so hard it tore him from our grip, and the last thing I saw was his face vanishing into a swarm of shadows, and those glowing eyes staring at me with hunger. Daniel broke down screaming. Asen dragged him up, and we kept running, praying, crying, until finally a door appeared at the end of the hall, wide open like a mouth. We didn't care if it was a trap. We ran through it and stumbled into the night, collapsing on the wet grass outside. The sky was no longer cloudy but crimson like blood smeared across the stars, and the gate was gone, replaced by a solid wall of bricks, as if the school had swallowed its own way out. Behind us the building stood tall, its windows glowing faintly like eyes, and from inside came the sound of laughter, hundreds of voices laughing in unison, and in the middle of that laughter I heard Bilal's voice, clear and broken, calling my name one last time. We never found him. We never spoke of that night again. But sometimes when the wind is still and the night is deep, I hear it, faint and distant, a child's voice whispering, "Don't go, play with us." And I know one day the old school will call me back, and next time I won't come out alive. We never spoke of that night, but it never left me because sleep was no longer a place of peace. It became a doorway back to that hallway, that endless throat of darkness where Bilal was dragged away screaming my name. Weeks passed and the police searched, but they found nothing except that old ruin that stood like a corpse at the edge of the village, and they said Bilal probably ran away. Maybe he drowned in the river. Maybe he left for the city, because no one wanted to admit what we saw. Daniel refused to leave his house, and when I went to see him, his eyes were hollow, and he would not speak except to whisper prayers under his breath like someone warding off something that followed him. Asen tried to pretend it never happened, but I saw how he jumped at every sound, how his hands shook when the night fell, and the wind carried faint laughter from somewhere far away. I told myself we were safe, that it was over, but deep down I knew nothing was over because Bilal's voice did not stop calling me in the dark. It started soft like a thought at the edge of my mind. Then it grew louder every night until I woke up sweating, hearing him whisper, "Arif, come back. You left me there." One night I could not take it anymore, so I sat up in bed and looked at the clock, and it was 11:59, the same time we walked into that place. And I heard something outside my window, a scraping sound like nails dragging across glass. My heart slammed in my chest, and I went to the window, and there, on the glass, were words written in the condensation that should not have been there because it was summer and the air was dry. The words said, "Come back." My legs shook so hard I almost collapsed, but then I heard laughter from the street and I saw them. 4 small shadows standing in a row, their heads tilted, their eyes glowing faint red in the dark. They were staring up at me, and one of them lifted an arm and waved slowly. And that was when I realized they were wearing school uniforms, burnt and torn, the same uniforms from that school. I stumbled back, tripped over the chair, and when I looked again they were gone, but the street was wet as if rain had fallen only there. I did not sleep that night, and when morning came I decided I had to tell Asen because he was the only one who might believe me. When I reached his house, the door was open, and his mother was crying on the floor and people were gathered whispering. And when I asked what happened, they told me Asen was gone, his bed empty, his window wide open with deep scratches on the wall like someone dragged him out with claws. I felt the blood drain from my body because I knew where he had gone, or rather where they had taken him. I ran to Daniel's house, and he was sitting in a corner rocking back and forth, his lips cracked, his nails broken and bloody like he had been clawing at something. He looked up at me with wide, empty eyes and whispered, "They will take me next. I hear them singing." And then he started humming a tune, a soft lullaby that sent chills down my spine because it was the same melody we heard faintly in the school before the whispers began. I tried to shake him to make him listen, but his mouth opened and he screamed so loud my ears rang, and then he went still, his head falling to the side, and that was when I saw it. His tongue was gone, torn out, blood pooling on the floor like dark paint. I stumbled back, slipped on the blood and fell, and in that moment I heard giggles from behind me, soft and playful like children hiding behind curtains, and I felt hands, cold and small, touch my shoulders. I spun around, but there was nothing except the faint smell of smoke and the sound of little feet running across the wooden floor. I ran out of that house without looking back, my lungs burning, and when I reached the road the sun had vanished, though it was still afternoon. The sky was heavy and red, the air thick, and in the distance I saw the old school standing tall, its bell tower whole again, the windows glowing faintly like eyes watching me. My legs moved on their own and I walked, each step sinking into the earth like it wanted to hold me back. But something pulled me forward, something that sounded like Bilal's voice calling, "Please, help me." When I reached the gate it opened without a sound, and the moment I stepped in the world behind me disappeared, because when I looked back there was no road, no trees, only darkness pressing against the fence like a living thing. I walked into the hallway and it was different now. The walls clean, the lights flickering faintly as if power had returned, and the sound of children laughing filled the air, distant at first then all around me. I passed classrooms and saw shadows moving inside, small figures sitting at desks, heads turning slowly to watch me as I walked by, their faces hidden but their eyes glowing like tiny embers. I tried to run, but the floor felt sticky, pulling at my shoes, and when I looked down it was blood, thick and black, flowing from the cracks between the tiles, and I realized the cracks were not cracks at all but mouths, dozens of them, opening and closing, whispering my name in voices that sounded like my mother, my father, my friends. Voices that did not belong here. The hallway ended at the door to the assembly hall, and I pushed it open and froze because the hall was filled with children, hundreds of them sitting cross-legged on the floor, their heads bowed, their skin burnt and peeling. And in the center stood a figure taller than any man, its body draped in black, its head crowned with twisted metal that looked like the remains of the bell tower. It turned to me slowly, and where its face should have been there was nothing but a hole, deep and endless. And from that hole came a sound like 1,000 voices screaming at once. My knees gave out, but invisible hands lifted me, dragged me forward, and the figure leaned down, its hollow face inches from mine, and a voice spoke inside my head, not in words but in pure hunger, a promise that I would never leave. I tried to fight, I tried to pray, but the voices drowned every thought until I felt my mind unravel like old cloth. The last thing I remember before the dark swallowed me was seeing Bilal standing among the children, his eyes empty, his mouth sewn shut, and his hands reaching out to me like he wanted to pull me into that circle of endless laughter. Now I am here, writing these words, though I do not know if they are real or if they are just another whisper in this endless night, because I have not seen the sun in what feels like years and the laughter never stops. And sometimes I hear footsteps in the hall and I know another fool has come to play at midnight. And when they do, I will call their name, because That is the only way to make the voices quiet, just for a little while. So if you hear someone whisper your name in the dark, do not turn around, do not follow, because it might be me, and if you do, I will never let you go.